how did you get involved in the daycare system, doing CPR in the daycare system?
So it kind of blossomed into that. I really actually started within the healthcare arena, with nursing facilities, dental offices, and then it just kind of, one referral went into the a daycare system, a daycare facility, and then it just blew up from there. I just had one referral to a daycare center, and that one went to another one. And next thing I knew, I was meeting with the directors that kind of oversee and overlap with the region. So the cities and the state is pretty much divided into regions. So pretty much all the Philadelphia region, and then that just kind of the other chapters kind of passed me along and adopted. I had to come out, and kind of the progression just went from there.
So you didn't have daycares in your site to begin with. You weren't like, I'm going to go run after daycare centers.
No, not initially. Initially, because I knew the healthcare world, I focused my attention there. And then, like I said, as just through one reference, I just saw that there was a complete market that was untapped, and that's kind of where I then focused a lot of my direction. So currently, I would say 85% of my business is geared around daycare centers, 80 to 85%.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
So that's interesting to me. So when you first came up with the idea of doing this, like, were you just doing it for free, or were you like, maybe I should do a business around this? Like, how did that idea come to you?
So initially, it came about because I had a lot of, I was trained to be a trainer, and I was doing it through my work, where I was training other nurses and other staff in general. And then I had people that were colleagues that would ask me that I didn't typically work with, like, hey, can I get some training, or can you do a class, and so on and so forth. And so the convenience that people were looking for, so they didn't have to go, find and seek all these other classes and pay more money, which, the cost was a big issue for people. Just kind of found that, all right, people are willing to have me come out. They get a small group together. It's convenient for them. I'm not charging the price is reasonable. And so I saw that there was a need. People felt like they appreciated it. I have some real life experience where I can, some of the information that I present, I can speak to it firsthand as having experienced it. And I got a lot of really good feedback from that. And so that's kind of how it kind of started.
How did you decide how much to charge people? Was it just something that you made up, or did you?
No, just essentially almost like a market analysis, right? So like, hey, what are you guys paying? What are you paying now? Me knowing what facilities where, you would come in for a training would charge you. And so I wasn't looking to become rich, but, delivering a service at a competitive rate was very attractive to people. So, versus them having to go somewhere, we would get a group together. I would go to them, bring my equipment with me. So the convenience, and together with a competitive rate, made it appealing to people, I believe.
So did you buy the equipment first? I mean, was it a big expense, or was it something that you're like, oh, I can do this, and you had a group already set up and you bought the equipment?
Yeah, so initially I actually borrowed equipment and built a little bit of capital from there, and then just kind of used that capital. Once I saw that it was something that had some potential, I invested into getting my own equipment, and then just kind of grew it from there and bought more equipment as I saw necessary and as needed. So
so then somebody in one of the groups that you were in referred you to a daycare center. That's how that worked?
Yeah, so I just had one that, they asked me, they're like, hey, do you do daycare centers? I said, well, I haven't, but I absolutely can. And so that was it. And then from there, one referral led to the next. And then not only that, but then once I saw there was a need for the daycare center, because basically it's every 2 years I'm out there. It's, for them, it's also a convenience where if they don't have to look for somebody, because of course they're always looking for the best rate, the quickest timing, whatever's going to be most convenient. If you're flexible, can you be there on an evening? Can you be there on a weekend? And so being able to meet those needs, I then took it upon myself to reach out to a lot of these daycare centers on my own, and basically just cold calls for a lot of them, and introducing myself. And next thing you know, they were asking me to come in.
But were they receptive to that when you would call them, or were they just kind of like, what are you trying to sell us? Or
Some were, some weren't. And, like with anything else, some would give you the time and ask for more information, especially if they knew they were coming up for a renewal and they needed that. They would give you a little bit more of their attention. A lot of them, I found myself leaving messages and follow-up calls, and surprisingly, a lot of them returned my call.
That's awesome. So did you start hiring staff to work with you, or are you still doing this on your own, or?
So for the most part, I do it on my own. Where I do bring additional staff with me is if they are bigger classes, just so that there's appropriate ratios and that, we're meeting the AHA guidelines for training. But for the most part, I've been able to manage it on my own. And the big reason why it's harder to be able to bring staff on is because I do try to be very accommodating to the facilities when I come out. And in order, a lot of people's schedules don't work around that. So, I'll go out as late as like start classes at 6 o'clock in the evening. Sometimes it's in the weekends in the morning. So I really try to be flexible to whatever it is that their needs are.
And so for you, is this just like a side business, or is this something that you could live off of, or?
Well, so I'm a big Shark Tank fan, and there's always the entrepreneur, but I'm scared to make that leap. I feel that what my salary and what I make off of that is probably very easily someone's salary on a regular basis. So I'm proud of the fact that I've been able to grow it to that point. If I didn't have a family that depended on me and then I needed those benefits right now because of my life situation where my wife's not, she's staying home more so with the kids and works per diem just to keep her own licensure up, I would definitely say that I could venture out. And if I focused all my attention solely on it, it's something where I would be definitely able to survive on my own.
That's awesome. Is it something that you continually look for more and more daycare centers to, is it a constant process for you?
So unfortunately, no. And I say that because I feel like if I invested more time, I can even acquire more business, because I really only have tapped into like the Philadelphia and the very like Philadelphia region and maybe like some of the suburbs. So there's so many more areas that I haven't even ventured out into. That for me, most of the business that I do acquire that's new is just all referrals. So this person, I'll get a call from, I got referred by so-and-so, can you come out and do a class? Or so that's kind of how it's been working. So I feel like if I devoted more time and energy to it, that I could make it grow even further and bigger.
Right. But for now, it's a consistent income that's coming in for you, that it doesn't impact you have a full-time job that you're working. This is a side income that you have that generates nice money, and it doesn't require too much of your time, or does it?
It requires my time in the sense that I need to be available to go teach the classes, but it doesn't in the sense that I'm not investing a whole lot more time outside of that. It's investment wise in terms of time outside of the actual class. There's not a whole lot of it.
How many do you do, like a week or a month or something?
It varies. So there's months where I'm literally doing a class every day. And there's months where, I may just do, 10 classes. So, but on average, I'm doing at least, I would say 10 to 15 classes a month. Oh,
wow.
Yeah.
So it just rolls off your tongue, right?
Yeah, it comes in waves, and it's just, sometimes, like I said, sometimes there's months where I'm getting hit every day, and, I don't have enough hours in my days and days in my week. And I don't say no. I say yes, and then I find a way to make it happen. And so, so it fluctuates. It definitely fluctuates.
Wow, that's awesome. Wow. So just, in my mind, it's like, because for me, like for business, like I want to set the business up and then have somebody else run it. So in that scenario, I'm thinking like, who could you hire like to do all this stuff for you, so to give you some free time?
Yeah. And so I think in the feedback that I've gotten back, I think that I've been successful thus far because I'm the one doing the class.
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the feedback that I get, it's just like, wow, like, we've taken this class 9 million times because we've been we've been in daycare for however long they've been doing it, but you bring a different twist to it where you can bring real life experience to it, and you can speak to it, and you've done CPR on someone, or you've helped somebody through this, scenario, versus a lot of times we have these people who just take the course because they want to teach it, but can't really, if you have any other questions, you can't really speak to anything. And so that's some of the feedback that I get on a regular basis from doing classes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And so it's hard to replicate yourself in in somebody else.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's people that potentially could do it, but again, it's their availability. Are they willing to travel? Are they willing to specific times, dates, and so there's a lot of coordination that goes into it in terms of like setting a time up as well, because they may have only specific days, and so I always have my calendar with me, so I can pretty much schedule anything on the spot. The fact that all right, well, let me call you back. I got to see if somebody's available. It's just, I've tried it, and it's just too inconvenient to really try to get to schedule something. And having somebody wait for a couple days until I hear back, it's just bad business, and people just kind of get a little bit turned off by it. So I've found that it works a lot better when I just do it on my own.
And is it a highly competitive market? Like if you don't respond, will they just call somebody else to come do it?
Yeah, and that's the thing, it's almost like the BBD, right? So the bigger, better deal, whoever's going to be out quicker, give you the best deal, that's who they're really going to go with. At the end of the day, I don't think they really care about the material per se. It's just they need to check off that box for the Department of Health or whoever it is that's going to be checking them, checking their organizations to make sure they're compliant with their first aid CPR training.
Right. Were there a lot of compliance things that you had to go through to get certified? I mean, is there special things that you needed, or did you need a collaborating physician or a medical director or anything like that?
Nope, nothing at all. Nothing at all. I mean, the daycare center world itself, as just the medical field, they really only acknowledge American Heart Association or American Red Cross as a certified provider. So as long as you have your training through one of those two programs, you're pretty much good to go. They do also have, at least in the state of Pennsylvania, there's PQAS, which is basically a star rating program. So they range from no stars to 5 stars. And if you're a parent looking for a facility, you want to go where there's a 5-star program. So based on their star leveling program, then the more stars they have to have a certain percentage of their staff certified. Although it seems like as of recently they've changed that, and no matter where they fall in the star program, they have to have all of their staff trained on first aid CPR certified. So good for me, bad for them, because now no matter who it is, they all have to have the training regardless. So
okay,
yeah,
awesome. And is this your only side gig, or do you have other side gigs that you're working on as well?
So as you know, we're myself and Dom are working on, hopefully potentially at some point in time, we're going to be able to make this nursing student NCLEX review type of program, help that get going and moving. So in terms of side work, in terms of that's the one program. I also do some real estate stuff. So I have a couple real estate properties that I have as investments that I work with. So
you're a busy man.
Yeah, I am. My goal is to retire when I'm 55. That is my goal. So I'm hoping.
That's awesome. Well, at least when you turn 55, if you're not ready to retire, you can do your the daycare thing full time.
I always kid around and I say, if once my kids get of age where they can work, this would be a great gig for them to be able to learn and carry forward, and beats newspapers or working at McDonald's or some mall job or something like that. So I think it's cool to do. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. I told Dom this, and I'll tell you, but make sure you get tons and tons of pictures, like of you with the students, and just video, like even if you got like 5 seconds of, I don't know, you talking with a student, or you and Dom laughing with a student, or, the student asking questions, or just engagement. Nobody has to know what you're talking about. You could be talking about, tapas, but, just that kind of engagement, and just.
I would love to be able to see if this experience could grow into taking our own students or taking our own groups over there, building these connections there now, that I'm the staff and the university, the relationships that I'm building there. If that's something that I would be able to then tap into down the line, where we would be able to have our own trips or international travel.
Oh my God. And you speak Spanish, right?
Correct.
Oh, that's amazing. Like, people pay big money for that kind of stuff. I mean, I'll pay you guys if you let me know when you're when you're going, because I'd love to do tours like that. I love it.
And I think it would be, I don't know. I mean, I think it may not even need to be students. Like, I'm sure there may be just healthcare providers in general, nurses, people who just, I don't know, people that might be interested in general. So I don't know. We'll see.
Even like tours of like the Florence Nightingale Museum in London, right? Or another group went through and did Switzerland, and they went to the ICN, and that kind of stuff. And, you pick like 3 places that you go visit, and the rest of it's like a tour. So, and especially if you know Spanish, that just opens a whole continent of South America that you could go to, that people go over to Europe, but nobody goes down to South America. So
yeah, they were actually initially had thrown something out about if maybe I've had any interest in doing like Argentina, potentially some other South American countries. So we'll see how this one goes, and I guess they'll make some decisions from there.
Oh, that's awesome! This is a whole new, it's a whole new opportunity for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So,
well, yeah, definitely keep the doors open with anything that comes through. And that's, basically the general theme that I get from people that have started businesses is that they're always open to ideas, they're always thinking about kind of like what's next, and, they're always saying yes to everything. So.
Yes, and that's me. And even Dom will ask me, he's like, how do you have enough, like, where do I find the time? I don't know where I find the time. Like, I think I function on like 4 hours of sleep, and again, no matter what they throw at me, like, I'm usually like, yes, absolutely. Like, I did a class once, it was like over 100 people for this daycare center, which is like a chain, but they had multiple sites that came out, and they're like, can you do it? I'm like, absolutely. And then I'm like, all right, now I need to find a lot of people. Afterwards, I'm like, all right, I need to really figure out how the hell I'm going to do this. So I ended up with like, 10 or 11 other instructors that went with me, and I was able to, I paid them, and they other groups, but that's the type of thing where I'm like, I just won't say no. I just try to find a way afterwards how to make it work.
Yeah, no, it's a good strategy.
Most recently now, I'm working on the school district is looking to do something, because all seniors before they graduate have to have a class in CPR.
Really?
Yeah. So that's something that the school district's working on, and Comcast, they are looking at doing their entire building, like their whole entire workforce. And my brother works for Comcast, so he's kind of the one that put a bug in people's ears. So working and talking with them and seeing like what exactly they're looking for and what they're trying to do. I find that a lot of like these corporate places, the law firms, things like that, are starting to really look into things, and usually it happens because somebody arrested and they had some sort of emergency and nobody knew what to do, and that's where you get a lot of these other people that or people that approach me are based on like they have an experience, something happened, now they want to have something in place to if something were to happen down the line.
Yeah, actually, Carrie was just telling me about this initiative that they have, like, I guess, if you have an active shooter and somebody gets shot, the most people die from exsanguination, and people don't know that you're supposed to like stop the bleeding or something. So there's like an initiative called Stop the Bleed, where they've been teaching like law enforcement, how to compress, and if that doesn't work, to tourniquet, the limb or whatever is bleeding. That's also something that would be right up your alley.
Yeah. It's scary. What seems common sense is not really common a lot of times.
Right. I'm like, don't you just tourniquet it? She's like, yeah, it's not common knowledge. I'm like, I guess that's 20 years of medical training. I don't know. It seems obvious to me. You'd want to stop the bleeding, but
right.
But All right. Well, I'll give you some free time before your kids come home from soccer practice.
I think they're home already, and it's very quiet. I told my wife, I'm like, hey, I'm gonna get on a call. Can you please just? So I think they're home already, but I'm not.
They're like busting at the seams to run in. Well, have an awesome, awesome trip in Spain, and I can't wait to hear about it. And definitely get lots of pictures.